Welcome to this Q&A session for the film iHUMAN, which is part of the 31st edition of NORDISK PANORAMA Film Festival. This film is not only nominated for Best Nordic Documentary, but it also has a chance to win the Audience Award, so do not forget to vote online after this session. My name is Elin Kamlert, and I will be the host of this Q&A. And I have the pleasure of talking with Tonje Hessen Schei, who is the director of iHUMAN. Hi Tonje, welcome.
Thank you.
How are you?
I'm good, all things considered, we're pretty lucky here in Norway. I guess despite COVID, things are pretty much back to normal, it seems.
Wonderful, wonderful. So let's start from the very beginning here. I know you made your previous film before this was called The Drone. It was about the use of drones in warfare. So you're obviously very interested in tech development and its impact on the world. But can you tell us about what first motivated you to make this film? You have this interest, and what motivated you, and if that motivation changed at all during the making of the film?
Yeah, well, for the last 15 years, I've been increasingly interested in the rapidly changing relationship that we humans have to technology. And while I was working on Drone, one of the things that struck me was how the weapons were becoming more and more autonomous. And when I started researching this, I realized that artificial intelligence already was kind of sneaking into our lives and changing systems and structures in society without us having any clue about what was going on. And absolutely no public debate about the consequences of this. So that's when the idea for iHUMAN was born. And this was in 2014. And since then, we've just been, surfing on sort of this AI tsunami. And it's been just mind-blowing to see how fast this technology is developing and how fast it's impacting our lives and our societies, not to mention our future.
Mm. And so you've been working on this for a few years then. Can you say something about how you did your research for it? Because we have so much information and insights in this film, and it's delivered by, the world-leading experts really in the field. So I imagine the extensive research, how extensive it must have been. Can you tell us about how you approached it? Was it you? Was it a team? How did you find and select what to include,
Well, when you tackle an issue like artificial intelligence, and especially start looking at the power structures behind this technology, the first thing we started with was that the whole core team of the film, we took machine learning lessons to figure out the nuts and bolts on how this technology worked. And then we spent extensive amount of time and years on investigative research and trying to get access. And coming out of Drone, we had been up against the CIA and the US Air Force, and I was extremely excited to go on the inside of the tech industry. And I naively thought that, Google and Facebook would sort of welcome us to take us into, their processes and to see what kind of questions they are facing when they're developing artificial intelligence. And the massive arrogance and power that these tech giants have been, really provocative and also terrifying, because we are dealing with tech giants that know everything about us, and for them to have no transparency about how they're developing AI and how they're implementing it into our lives sort of set the course of this film. So in iHUMAN, we do follow some of the leading computer scientists at some of the best labs around the world in the US, in China, and in Europe. So I do feel that, we do come on the inside and we do see what kind of questions some of these leading scientists are facing. But for me, the biggest threat that we are facing is sort of the power concentration of what I see as almost like an AI mafia that is leading the development and the big power play in the industry.
And is that the arrogance that you're mentioning? Because right at the very end of the credits of the film, we could see that Google and Facebook has declined to take part in the film. Is that part of the arrogance, or can you just say how is this arrogance manifested for you as a filmmaker when researching this?
Well, you know, with Google especially, we were in close contact throughout the development and the production of the film, and they were always extremely interested in what we were doing, how we were approaching things, and always sort of, you know, pretending almost that, you know, they will let us in. I even went over to London and had in-person meetings with their, you know, press watchdog. And it looked like they were going to let us in, but every time we met, they interviewed me extensively about, you know, where we were, what we were looking at, and so forth. But everywhere we went, if Google was even in the building, we had to put down the cameras. And to see that kind of power and the kind of information control that these super tech giants have is definitely extremely concerning to me, not only as a filmmaker, but also as a world citizen that, you know, depend on their services constantly.
Yeah, I understand. It also makes everything even more invisible than what it already is, because one very interesting aspect about your film is that most of what it is about is invisible. You know, surveillance and algorithms and echo chambers and the future even, you know, are all invisible to us, which I think makes it a lot harder for us as humans to, you know, create a concept about it, to create an understanding about it. But of course, it also poses a very big challenge to you as a filmmaker. And even if you're not let in, it becomes physically invisible. So can you tell us about how you thought about that challenge in the beginning and how you ended up with the result that you have today in the film?
Well, I think in the beginning of the development and in the production of iHUMAN, and I just want to say, you know, before, you know, I say anything else, like I'm absolutely not against AI. I'm extremely fascinated by it, and I do think that this technology has tremendous, you know, possibilities, and I really hope that we can see some of the positive benefits of this technology come through. But when I started working with the film, you know, I also really wanted to focus on the positive benefits. But after, you know, 80 interviews and also seeing what their agenda was at all the tech conferences that I went to, I started getting really tired of the hype around the technology and, you know, big fluffy words like, you know, AI is going to help us solve all the major challenges that we're facing. It's going to end poverty. It's going to help us with the climate change. It's going to help us reach all of the sustainability goals of the United Nations. It's going to end hunger. I mean, it's just on and on and on. But there was no sustainable conversations about how we're going to solve the ethical challenges that this technology brings right now in our lives. How are we going to, you know, tackle the big like power concentration in the industry? How are we going to get more diversity in people that program the codes that, you know, determine how we live? And how are we going to, you know, deal with surveillance and all the new challenges that AI brings into surveillance? So after a while, I really felt that it was most important for me to focus on the ethical challenges that we are now facing with AI. So for me, I really hope that iHUMAN can help spark that debate that we really need internationally right now.
I absolutely think it will, because you mentioned diversity, and I would like to talk a little bit more about that, expand a little bit on it, because you have met with like the leading pioneers here, the most innovative and most influential people on the scene. And to no huge surprise, they are mostly men. And they strike me, or I shouldn't say they, it's mostly Jürgen Schmidhuber. He strikes me as this sort of obviously very intelligent man, and a sort of, but a bit sort of introverted kind of person carrying, to me at least, not maybe the values needed to develop AI in the humanitarian direction that we want it to go. I mean, he says himself something in the lines of that he's not a people's person or not humanitarian driven or something like that. Yeah, isn't this a huge issue in and of itself? If he is the person, or people with his values are the now, or is it the issue?
Well, I definitely think that the issue of diversity is huge when it comes to how AI is developed and implemented, because a huge majority of the people that are making the AI programs and you know, plugging in the codes to our lives are very, very young white men who have grown up behind their computer screens. And I have to say that, you know, I am pretty shocked to, after talking to so many of them, to see what a limited worldview they have and what a limited, you know, understanding of the big issues that we are facing in society today, and to then realize that they are actually making systems that are put into the structures of society that help decide who will get the jobs, who will get insurance, what kind of systems are being put into use by police and the legal system. I mean, it's really, really far-reaching. And then, you know, you also, if you think about that, most of the AI systems today, like one of the experts in the film says, used to for killing, spying, and brainwashing. So it's really, I mean, we are facing the most far-reaching technology of our times, and to then realize that these systems are controlled by very, very few extremely wealthy white men whose decisions affect a huge portion of the human race. I mean, then, you know, the consequences of that is something that we have to take very seriously.
And now that you painted the picture, both in the film and now with this comment, which I think is very insightful, what do you think my job is, sort of as a member of the general public who has now seen your film? What is my task in this? What can I do? Or
well, that is the big question, and because, you know, we are facing such a far-reaching technology, I think it's really, really important to realize that we have to start with ourselves. These big tech companies call us users, and I do think it is our duty to understand and to get to know how we are being used and how we are being manipulated. You know, how is our information being controlled? Through echo chambers where we're being kept to, so that we are being kept on their platforms online for as long as possible, so that we see more and more ads. I mean, that is, you know, how we get our information mostly today. So that is one thing, is how do we get informed about what's going on? How can we make sure that we are not just getting our news from, you know, Facebook or Instagram? How do we like reach out and get a new kind of critical thinking? I think is really essential. And then we also have to make sure that, you know, our local and national governments are doing what they can, and that they are being informed on how to make the right policies for these ethical challenges that this technology brings. And then we also have to work internationally, because this is a global issue. And as individuals, we could do a lot. I mean, we have more power than I think that we realize. But these issues have to be tackled internationally. And we are now seeing that there is a lot of movement in the EU to set up international regulations for the development and implementation of AI. But we have just started that work, and it's a long way to go. But something that, you know, we can do something about is like, how much power should one company have? You know, I mean, if you look at who's spending the most money and who has the most power in the AI industry today, I mean, Google is using more power, more money, and they have more power in the AI development than entire nations.
Mm.
So, I mean, I love Google. I use Google every day, but
Yeah,
you know,
so do I.
yeah, but we need to come up with some alternatives, you
Yeah.
know, and I totally believe that a new digital future is possible, but we all have to take some responsibility in how do we get our voices heard and how we create that new future.
Mm.
How can we get creativity and cooperation to replace, you know, the competition and the profit driven digital world that we now have.
Mm.
And that's, you know, I really believe that. I mean, I love people. I really truly also have a lot of faith in our creativity and our power to connect in this digital world. And I'm looking forward to seeing what actually can come of that, because there is a lot of exciting movement going on right now, but it's just starting. So,
But say something more about that though, because one of the final questions I have is like the film is very up to date, and I imagine that the work with the film, the impact that the film can have, can just go on and on from now on. How are you working with the film right now, and how can we follow it?
so we have a really awesome impact campaign that goes with the film. I just have to brag a little bit about our impact
Yes,
producer.
do it.
So Danielle Turco-Wilson from Think Film has done a tremendous job. And we actually started our impact work while we were in production. So before the film was finished, we had special events at the Berlinale and also in Cannes, where we had high-level panels with the people that were in charge of policies in the EU and the UN, as well as the vice president of Microsoft that came and discussed these issues that, you know, we're facing and try to figure out how we can work better with the future. So we've been working with policymakers to change the narrative as they are going into the work on international regulations. We are also working with the tech industry, where Microsoft has come on board as a partner. And we are, you know, constantly participating in tech conferences. Well, now with COVID, it's mostly here in Norway, but also internationally through online events. And here in Norway, we've had a lot of exciting screenings and special events with policymakers, the police, the intelligence community, and they're all going to use the film internally. So I feel like we've been able to, here in Norway at least, start the conversation on a national level. And then we are continuing to work with the UN and the EU to have special screenings there.
Amazing. Amazing. And how can the viewers now follow the work that you are doing with the film and the topic? And can they reach out to you if they have more questions about this? Because we're actually already soon running out of time here today.
Yeah, so, you know, it is kind of funny, but we are mostly active on Facebook. That is sort of our main platform. So please follow iHUMAN Film on Facebook, and you can also reach me there if you have any more questions.
Cool. Thank you so much, Tonje, for participating in this Q&A, and thank you to everyone in the audience for watching. Remember that there are many other interesting films to enjoy, so tell your friends about them, and don't forget to vote for the Audience Award. Thank you again, Tonje.
Thank you
Good
so
luck
much.
with everything.
All right, thanks.